Friends and classmates say the 21-year-old suspect in the Boulder, Colorado shooting was a tormented wrestler with a short fuse. Okay, so this has several writers and journalists, Haven, Azmi, and Ashley. So I didn't say their last name, so I didn't want to mess it up. Ashley Coleman, Azim Harun, and Haven Orichio Agrestes. So I may not be saying it correctly, so that's why I wanted to leave off the last names, but sorry for that. So, for those of you who probably know already, this horrible incident that just took place not very long ago about the shootings in Boulder, Colorado. And so here is Ahmad Alyssa, who is accused of killing 10 people in Boulder, Colorado, the mass shooting. And I just wanted to say before I get into this article about his friends and some of the other reports that are coming in about this individual is that right away when we hear these horrible shootings or these horrible incidents that take place, the next thing that comes up is gun control. That's what people always start arguing over. And I'll be honest to say this, I know where that comes from because people think if we control guns, then maybe we won't see these horrible killings. Well, I feel that in my opinion, that there are a lot of laws. There's already a lot of gun control because it's not really that easy to get a gun um, for some people. And I'll just be honest with you, I feel like certain individuals, if they look the part, it's easier for them to get a gun. And most of the places that I know that a friend of a friend has told me, most of the places when you go to gun shops, you'll see some African American, but not as many African American in gun stores because you have to be able to pass background checks. And I know some places may not be as thorough, but most places are so thorough that it's not really that easy to pass those background checks, especially if you have prior history of any incidences in your criminal background history or anything like that. And a lot of times people don't just get those guns easily out of gun stores unless they know somebody. And the other reason is most of the people that are in the gun shops that I've drove by or I've seen other friends that have talked about it, usually they happen to be not black, they're white. And they tend to can afford AK-47 guns. Those guns are not cheap. Let me explain something to you. Those are not cheap guns. So, I mean, there are neighborhoods that maybe they have like if you have people that are in neighborhoods that don't have maybe a lot of resources, they're not going into gun shops to buy those type of guns. They might go get the guns underground, where they don't have any serial number on it, it can't be traced or something like that. And you got to be somebody that's pretty ruthless, and maybe you're just a career criminal, you're in the life of crime. And so most of these stories that usually come out tend to be people that have military background experience or they're able to have access to these guns. And a lot of times it's people who are more on the wealthier spectrum in terms of finances that can afford these, going in the gun store, buying AK-47s. Just 6 days before this incident took place, he was able to purchase that gun. And so think about how much these guns cost. I mean, and then with his mental state, maybe he didn't have a history of doing anything, but he was like a time bomb ticking. And so, how many other stories are going to come out like this now? I'm just saying, However, there has been some incidences of people that maybe something happened to them in the war and they snap and they have access to these guns or they have an arsenal and maybe you don't hear anything about nothing until maybe years later and then they just snap or something. But like this right here, this article gets into this guy here, Ahmad Alyssa, and I believe his family's from Syria. So police identified Ahmad Alyssa, who is 21 years of age, as a suspect in the mass shooting in Boulder, Colorado. Um, so Alyssa is accused of gunning down 10 people at a King Supers Market on Monday. So some who knew Alyssa in school remember him for his temper. So he had a history of having a short fuse, is what they say. Another said he was a normal kid. And so Ahmad Alawi Alyssa, excuse me if I don't pronounce the names correctly, but doing the best, whom police have identified as the suspect in the mass shooting at the King Soopers grocery store in Boulder, Colorado on Monday, lived most of his life in a suburban Colorado and had a temper. Those who knew him told the reporters this. He had a temper. So Alyssa, who was 21, was injured in the shooting. He was injured himself and is in stable condition, the police have said. So he has been charged with the 10 counts of murder and is scheduled to appear in court on Thursday. And so the victims in the shooting have been identified. And so all the names and the ages are here, and some people can see it. And they've shown photos of the people who have lost their lives. Denny Stong, 20 years of age. Nevin Stanisic, 23. Ricky Olds, 25. Trelona Bartoquek, 49. Suzanne Fountain, 59. Terry Leaker, 51. Eric Talley, 51, a police officer, and Kevin Mahoney, 61. Lynn Murray, 62. And Jody Waters, 65. So we are going to do everything in our powers to make sure that the suspect has a thorough trial. Boulder, Colorado Police Chief Maris Harold said on Tuesday. And so you can see here, and I guess they were holding a press conference and basically going over the update on what happened. So authorities said the police have not yet identified the motive of this whole shooting. So court documents viewed by insiders said Alyssa had purchased a rifle 6 days before this shooting had occurred. So in the affidavit for the arrest warrant reviewed by insider detective Sarah Cantu wrote that Alyssa had removed all his clothing and was dressed only in his shorts when he was arrested outside of the market. So he had blood on his right thigh, Cantu said. So Alyssa lives in Arvada, a city that's 30 minutes south of Boulder, Colorado, or of Boulder in Colorado. So during the investigation into this shooting, a woman who recently married Alyssa's older brother told the police that she had seen him in the family's home a few days earlier playing with the weapon that she described as this machine gun, the affidavit David said. So investigators learned that Alyssa had purchased this. It was a Ruger AR 556 pistol, and this was March the 16th, the affidavit said. So a temper and paranoia. So basically this is getting into Alyssa, his background. So Alyssa's family, they immigrated to the U.S. from Syria in 2002, and when he was a toddler, this was when they came here. So his parents eventually opened a restaurant. Sultan Grill is what it's called in Arvada, according to Colorado business records. So Alyssa's brother Ali Aliwi Alyssa told the Daily Beast that Ahmad had acted paranoid and that it got worse over time, of course, when he had started high school. So the guy used to get bullied a lot in high school and he was like an outgoing kid, but after he went to high school, he got bullied a lot and he started becoming antisocial. So Allah or Ali, Alyssa told the Daily Beast this. So Ali Alyssa added that he believed that the shooting was not at all a political statement, but the result of mental illness. And so I just want to stop for a minute. We've heard these stories before, but he was able to get, with all of what was going on and all of the people that knew him, for some reason he was able to purchase that gun with no problem, no questions asked. Just think about that. And you know, nobody would suspect that, can you imagine being in the store around somebody like that and you don't know when they're going to snap, I mean, this can happen to anybody, but even now, let's just even, like people go in gun shops to look at some of the things that are in there. It's like, what it would, just imagine if he was there, and he's able to purchase this gun, he's able to get out with a weapon. But he picked that day and that market and those innocent people. And so this is what they're investigating right now, trying to find what is the motive. And right now it's being viewed as maybe there's mental illness and a paranoia issue going on here. But Ali Alyssa also told CNN that his brother had acted paranoid after 2014 as well. So he would say that someone is chasing me, someone's chasing me, someone's investigating me. So Alyssa told CNN this. So they already saw signs that something wasn't right. Why don't people give people help if you know all of this is going on? That's my question. That maybe it wouldn't have turned out like it did had these people that knew what they knew about him reached out to him to try to help him. You saw the signs were there. But it goes on to say that he would say that he thought somebody was chasing him. So, and we're like, come on, man, there's nothing. So he was just closing into himself. And so they saw that he was becoming more withdrawn. He was acting paranoid. And it appeared to be like he had mental issues going on. So it was not clear whether Alyssa's had been diagnosed with mental illness, and authorities have not disclosed the motive still as of yet. So researchers have long said that mental illness is not an indicator of violence. So think about it. We always hear some of these stories, and a lot of times mental illness is brought up. So if you knew that this person had all these issues going on and it could have been mental illness, why didn't you get him some help? And this is your family member, your close family member. You know he had a history in high school of blowing up at people. He's got in trouble for physical fights. So why didn't you get him help then? So now that he's actually killed people and murdered people, now you go to this, oh, he's suffering from mental illness. So just think about it. So people with mental illness are more likely to be victims of violence than perpetrated. So which is true. So a man identifying himself as Alyssa's brother-in-law told the Sun that he was strange, calling him a loner who would sit away from everyone during family dinners. Insider was not able to independently confirm the man's relationship with Alyssa. And so he has not, or he has a reputation for being stupid, not smart. Usaim Al Musa told the outlet. So that right there seems pretty mean. So from what they're saying, that he was withdrawn and he was bullied a lot and he had possible issues of paranoia, mental illness. All this stuff is going on and none of these people, he lived in the suburbs. He had money to buy guns. You know, he wasn't that crazy. He had enough sense to go and buy and purchase firearms. So all of these people that saw all these signs, all these things they're talking about, and nobody had any money to get them any counseling. So you get where I'm coming from. But he has a reputation. Listen to this, for being stupid and not smart. Why would you say that? But he was not like a proper Muslim. I don't know what kind of Muslim he was. So he did not go to the mosque I go to. So Al Musa added that Alyssa lived with his parents in his parents' basement and worked at the family restaurant, the son reported. And so his history of violence, it gets into that. That Alyssa was a wrestler at Arvada West High School, and he had shared photos of himself in his uniform on social media. Facebook has since deleted this account there and on the Instagram that he had as well. So he had an account there. So those who wrestled with Alyssa in high school described him as having a temper as well. So they knew all the way back in high school he had a really bad temper and nobody got him any help. They just knew he had this temper. So a police report from November of 2017 said that he attacked a classmate, leaving him bleeding from the nose and crying and throwing up. But nothing else was done. That was it. And afraid to return to school as well. So Alyssa said that at the time the classmate had been bullying him for a year and had called him names like terrorist. Oh, wow. Interesting. So the report says this. So the school's resource officer wrote in the report that there had been no allegations of bullying from Alyssa. Okay, so he basically didn't go to them and report that he was being bullied. Well, most people who are bullied don't always want to go and tell people that they are being bullied because they're afraid of looking like they're scared, even though they might be scared, or maybe they're the bully. Who knows? You never know what dynamics that plays a part. So witnesses said it looked random. So Alyssa later pleaded guilty to the assault and was sentenced to 2 months of probation and 48 hours of community service. They already knew he had a history with getting into confrontation, and he had some other issues going on. So he had a short fuse. Now he gets into this. So Damian Cruz, who was friends with Alyssa and his older brother in high school, told Insider that the two of them bonded over video games and would hang out together after school. And Alyssa kept to himself a lot of the time, but was also approachable, he said. They talk mostly about video games in high school. So he had sense enough to have some kind of friendship with someone. So Cruz remembered that Alyssa had a tendency to lash out when he lost wrestling matches. So the temper, that seems to be consistent throughout this whole article with the friends, mentioning how he was. So racism was also prevalent at their high school as well, Cruz said. But he wasn't the guy to bully people, and he didn't start any drama, Cruz told Insider. The bully and the drama just found him, and when it did, he reacted over the top. So the former wrestler teammate named Dayton Marvel told Denver Post that Alyssa was kind of scary to be around, and once had an outburst during an intra-team match where he had threatened to kill people. So they already knew all of this information. This is way before this led up to this. So Marvel added that Alyssa was especially sensitive about his faith, saying that he would talk about him being a Muslim and how if anybody tried anything that he would file a hate crime and say that they were making it up. So former classmates are surprised. They saw and probably recognized him and knew that they went to school with him and they saw what happened. So another teammate of Alyssa's, identified only as Conrad, told the Daily Beast that he was surprised by the news but also remembered Alyssa's hot-headed behavior as well. So, one thing I can tell you is that he didn't take losing very well. So, the man said, I remember that in wrestling. So, he would throw his head gear and wouldn't talk to the coaches when he lost. So, if I remember correctly, he even cussed out one of the coaches one time. So, Mark Durohov, Dur- Durokov, who studied at Arvada West for a few months in 2017, told Insider that he sat with Alyssa at lunch and that he had always seemed like a normal kid at the time. But being the new kid, of course, I guess he came up to me, he said. He talked for a minute. We talked for a minute and we started to go to lunch together for a bit. And so Durkohov, who is now 22 years of age, remembered that Alyssa played sports and wrestled after school, and he had a few other friends who sat with him at lunch as well. So Dorkohoff said Alyssa never seemed angry during any time they knew each other, so it's very disappointing. So Dorkohoff said that, adding that they didn't stay in contact when they had left school. So Dorkohoff saw Alyssa's mugshot, and he didn't even recognize the team he had sat next to in high school, so it looks like an old dude, he said. So I guess having all the facial hair, he looked a lot older than what his real age is, 21. So he's a young adult. So you can see by looking at his face that something behind that look and how he looks is going on, and it isn't good, and there's something really bad that maybe he's experiencing. But I could see they're saying that, if he's got mental illness, there's no excuse for what he did, and I'm not making any. But you gotta know that this there is something going on. Whatever it is, it isn't normal. Um, but to go in and shoot all these people and do what he did, I mean, you're gonna be held accountable one way or another. Now, what I don't like is the gun law fighting. Like that's going to solve everything. We see this over and over again, and the more they tighten the restrictions on gun, make restrictions on gun, the more shootings happen. It actually happens a lot more when they start arguing about gun laws and, you know, gun reform or whatever. I feel like I know people are going to hate hearing this. Guns are not the ones that do the shooting, it's people that use the guns that shoot the guns that do the damage. And who has the gun? And what is behind the motive of them shooting the gun in the first place? And if it's mental illness, if it's violence, if it's demented thoughts of trying to hurt people, wherever this place, this ugly place, dark place it's coming from, it seems like no matter how many gun control laws they make, it seems like it gets worse and worse each, every so often you hear these stories. So I noticed that when I first saw the news coverage of this incident play out, they didn't really want to say who he was. They were careful to say who he was. And so if you look at the story of him, I'm going to assume that he's from a middle or upper middle class or maybe probably well off family. And that's one of the reasons why he was able to purchase the firearm. And the other reason I feel, and I'll be honest with you, I feel like when it's people that are white, they seem to be more believed that they'll be forthright and honest with a firearm and that they're not going to do any harm to anyone, even though yet they're purchasing a firearm. And so there's no questions asked. They're able to get access to these guns. And people who you would think are the ones that are getting the guns are not getting as much access, unless they do get access at all. If they're in that life, that's somebody, they're going to get access to guns another way, not through gun laws that you make. I'm just giving you a clue here. Like, you can make all the gun laws and restrictions you want to make, and if people want guns, they're going to find them, even if they do it the illegal way. And I believe that's usually how people do it. The people you don't want to have guns, and let's just be honest here, a lot of these laws, a lot of these gun restrictions is to stop black folks from having guns. But people, if they're going to get guns, if they really want them, they're going to get them, and they're not going to go to a store and purchase them. Because if they're that bad and they're doing crime like that, then they don't want to go to a store. So the gun has a serial number on it. It can be traced. The bullets can be traced. And they know who's got the gun and whose name and where their address is and where they, they're not going to do it that way. So the gun law thing is dead. Let's be real here. But the people that usually have access to these shops and they can buy these expensive guns and just walk in and they sign their name on the dotted line, they have no prior history, even though they have a history, but it's never documented. Some way, somehow, we have all these people coming out saying they saw all this stuff about this guy and he had all this history and he already was in trouble for having violent temper, but yet he was still 6 days before this incident able to purchase that type of weapon and do that much damage. So that just goes to show you, no matter how many laws you make, if somebody wants to get a gun, they're going to get one, whether you dislike that whole idea or not. And we know where we stand. Everybody has their own opinions how they stand on this issue. But I feel like, the restrictions that they do have in place, usually they don't stop the people like this, and other people that are going to come after that somehow get access to the weapons. But the people who they think they're stopping them, they're not stopping them. Because if they really want to do something, bad people, they're always out there doing crime. They're going to find other ways to get guns. They're not going to go in a gun shop to buy a gun. So, having said that, I'm just gonna let this go. It's just really sad. My condolences to the families of the people that lost their loved ones in this horrible incident. I know this is really tough for a lot of people, and it's scary because this could have been anybody in a supermarket. You're shopping. You're not thinking that day that you go to the store, the grocery store, and this is your last day. You kiss your kids goodbye, your family goodbye, or you just go into the grocery store and maybe pick up something. And then today you're hiding, you're ducking, you're running for your life, or maybe this is the end. So none of these people asked for it. None of these people knew that this was going to occur, and families are hurting. So I just think that the people who knew all of this, how do you feel? I'm wondering, how do they feel? All these people who knew he had these histories of all these incidences and nobody said anything until now. So having said that, I'm going to let this video go. What do you think about this? I mean, this is the same thing with all the other shootings that have happened, where people will leave manifestos or they'll tell one friend what they're about to do, or other people know of these people having histories of outbursts that seem unusual. But yet, these people come from really well-to-do backgrounds, but no counseling. You don't hear anything about counseling, getting him help, none of that. And then somehow tragedy strikes. Having said that, I'm going to let this video go. Thank you for listening.